It does feel a little bit like you guys are trying to build Rob Van Dam to be something special here. This is a couple of years before he would get the major push and become the world champ. What was McMahon's feeling about Van Dam at this point? A year and change prior, he had a big match with Jeff Hardy at the Invasion pay-per-view, and it felt like that could have been the first rocket ship, but it didn't happen. Here it feels like we're getting another slot with him on top. Why do you feel like Vince was a little reluctant to go with Van Dam? What didn't he get about Van Dam?
The fact that Rob wasn't the best on promos, and it all boils down to that. Vince did not feel that Van Dam had a lot of range in his personality, and Rob really wasn't willing to give us that range. Rob wanted to be who Rob Van Dam is, and Rob is a very zen kind of guy and yin and yang, and Rob wanted to be Rob, and Rob didn't want to act or do that much range. He just wanted to be himself, and Vince wanted a lot more out of him and felt that unless Rob could give him more personality and get better on his promos, that he was only going to go so far.
Is it fair to say that Booker T had the best run of anybody to come over from WCW? Because it feels like Booker T was so ingrained in everything for so long, and even still is now, that it's almost like he didn't have some of the WCW stink on him, so to speak, or he overcame it. What was it that made Booker T special? Because he was a multiple time champion here, figured it in a big way for a long time, and then still active with the company now.
Well, frankly, because I think Booker T was the best performer to come out of it at that time. Of the people that we got, and especially in the time frame that we got him, Booker T was the first big star that we got from WCW, and I think that Booker was probably the best performer of that group that came. And he continued. He continued to deliver year after year after year, and he made himself a superstar.
The match is going to go 39 minutes and 12 seconds. And of course, we know this is Shawn Michaels' crowning moment. He is going to become the world heavyweight champion here, winning the big gold belt. But I think what most people remember about this match and Shawn is the way he was dressed. He had some relatively plain brown tights. He didn't have his classic hand wraps that, matched his tights. And he had black knee pads, and then like a little Dutch boy haircut. This doesn't look like the Heartbreak Kid that we remember. And I feel like this is something that a lot of the guys in the back have to be ribbing him about. I mean, his gear doesn't look finished. The actual trunks are, but not the pants part. What do you remember about these doo-doo brown Shawn Michaels tights?
That's because his gear wasn't finished and it was put together at the very last minute. You left out the other part about it was his boots. He had these ugly brown boots as well that were the boots that he wore during the day and that he wore out in real life, that he used for the wrestling boots that day. And it looked like, I think doo-doo brown is an accurate description, and going back and asking for help on this and going, hey, refresh my memory on some of this stuff. And some of the feedback I got was, oh my God, Shawn's ugly ass tights.
That's what everybody remembers. Yeah.
Yeah. You think about all the things that happened was, in Shawn's ugly ass tights. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, oh my God. And the boots, and it wasn't the Shawn Michaels that people were accustomed to. It wasn't the Heartbreak Kid, the flamboyant Shawn Michaels that everybody was used to. Just felt kind of dull.
Well, the match wasn't dull. I guess we should say that RVD and Booker T are the first two eliminated from the chamber. But before RVD is eliminated, he goes up top to do a frog splash. And instead of the top rope, he climbs to the top of the pod. But he's not able to actually stand up completely and jump off. So he just sort of falls with a frog splash, and he winds up actually landing on Triple H's throat and injuring him pretty seriously. Tell us about this injury, Bruce.
Well, you go back in that match, even right before that spot, and RVD goes up. And this is a spot that I did love, was where Jericho reached up through the chain and pulled RVD's leg down into the pod. And I thought that was ingenious. It just was a different spot, and one that, you incorporate the pod and you have a guy that's in the pod, not in the match, being involved in the match. It was great. But when RVD came off, when we were watching it live, we're watching it, and it looked like Rob came down on Hunter's ribs, but he really came down, his knee came down onto his throat. And so we asked the referee, and you can see it from behind, but I asked the referee, is Hunter okay? And Earl gave me the sign that no, he was hurt. And for Earl, especially at that time with that level of talent in there, to say somebody's hurt, they got to be hurt bad. So we sent, we had another referee that was at ringside, find out exactly what the hell was going on. And you can actually see them in the shot going back to let us know that Hunter couldn't breathe. And we contemplated, sending somebody in there and getting him the hell out of the match. But he refused to leave, and he said he would be all right. He just needed to get his breath, but he had basically crushed his throat, and he couldn't get a breath, and he couldn't breathe. And he just sat there trying to calm down and trying to get a breath, but his I guess it had crushed his throat. And you can see at some point during the match, the trainer coming down on the hard camera side and talking to Hunter, and Hunter reassuring them that he was okay to continue in the match. But the whole damn thing, he had a hard time breathing and trying to get through that thing.
Wade Keller wrote, Triple H was rushed to a New York hospital after suffering a serious throat injury during the Elimination Chamber match at Survivor Series. He said the injury occurred when Rob Van Dam's knees landed across his neck after he performed a frog splash off the top of one of the cell doors of the chamber. Quote, it caused swelling on the inside of my throat, which closed down my airway. This sounds extreme, but the doctor explained to me that if somebody dropped a 10 or 20 pound weight on you from a few feet in the air and it hit you on the throat, it could crush your windpipe and kill you instantly. For me, the doctor said it was a lot of things. Rob tried to protect me as best I could. I rolled with the shot, and my neck's very thick from training it. All those things protected me, and a bit of luck too. And he says that he spent most of the next day in the hospital still wearing his gear. Quote, I basically sat bloody in the hospital in my gear until 11 or noon today. I was still in my gear, still covered in blood with confetti on my back. And the doctors told him that he wouldn't be able to wrestle for 10 days. He also addressed the rumor and innuendo that Van Dam was not safe. He says, this is a tough business, and there are certain moves in the business that are high risk moves. When we do them, we take high risk, and that's why they're called high risk moves. Every time you do one, the odds go up that something bad's going to happen. And this time something happened. The time was right, and there it was. This has nothing to do with Rob. I feel completely safe in the ring with Rob every time I'm in there with him. And of course, this comes out because Rob Van Dam had developed a little bit of a reputation for being stiff and hurting guys, whether it's right or wrong. Do you remember there being any sort of heat from the office that maybe, even though Triple H didn't think it was his fault, that somebody else?
No, accidents happen. And it was an accident, an unfortunate accident. And, it happened. I think the biggest thing was getting in there and the positioning on everybody where he was, trying to stand up and not having enough room with the chamber the way that it was. But accidents happen, and you can't get upset over accidents. Well,
it's interesting that, that's one of the big takeaways from this, because I think most people remember that for that, the doo-doo tights and then the neck injury or the throat injury. Lots of people are bleeding here. Of course, after RVD and Booker T are the first two eliminated, Kane and Jericho are next. That left Triple H and Shawn Michaels. But Jericho, Triple H and Shawn Michaels all bled, and they weren't able to do a lot of ridiculous spots because of the unforgiving structure, but they did do the whole thing we talked about with throwing Jericho through the bulletproof glass.
Just wasn't Canadian proof. Yeah.
Yeah. Triple H blocks a super kick attempt and then gives Shawn a pedigree. Shawn kicked out, and then Triple H goes for another pedigree, but Michaels backdrops out of it and winds up winning after the sweet chin music. Keller would write, a good final few minutes, good match overall, but not in the must-see category. Michaels didn't look like anything special in the match, so unless you were aware of his rep, his win wouldn't mean a lot. 3.5 stars. That was his takeaway. What did you think of this?
I thought it was a decent first outing. It wasn't a spectacular match. I thought that the guys worked awful hard and did some crazy stuff, but they were still feeling out what they could and couldn't do in the chamber. And I think that Triple H getting hurt kind of put limitations, because a lot of things that they had talked about and had planned in the match, they couldn't do because he wasn't able to do them. And he had to spend some time recuperating from the bump with Rob. So, guys were improvising in there, and they were trying to do some different things that didn't involve Triple H until it was time and he could get back in and get involved. But I didn't think it was bad. And again, for such an unforgiving structure, they did a lot of shit in there that, maybe they shouldn't have done, but at the same time, they made it work. And I think that there was not a whole lot to be disappointed in.
There's a report out there that Vince went back and forth for the few weeks leading up to Survivor Series about what to do with the belts. Of course, when Brock breaks a rib, it's pretty, obvious that Big Show's got to win. But there's talk that Vince wasn't sold that Shawn was able to perform at that level to justify holding the title, or wasn't over enough, and maybe was going to go with Triple H. Do you remember that being the case?
Well, going into it, it was always Triple H was going to come out of the damn thing. And at the last minute, Vince, they thought, well, everybody thinks that, everybody's calling that because Shawn's coming back, and no one's going to call Shawn winning the championship, which is true. Shawn wasn't full time. Shawn had no intentions of coming back on a full-time schedule in any way, shape, or form. So we weren't even thinking that way. And out of the blue, Vince is like, what if Shawn wins? And it's like, well, the initial reaction, that'd be great. That'd really be great if we had Shawn on a permanent basis, and Shawn were able to work live events and work TV, and we had a actual schedule from him. But Vince was like, we'll figure that out later.
One of the things that cracked me up about the chamber is I tried to imagine myself as a performer. Like, how weird is it to be in one of those pods before they let you out? Like, that's the epitome of fishbowling. What are you supposed to do in there? Like, there's guys in there fighting, but you're in the middle of everyone in the arena. 20,000 people are looking at you. What are you supposed to do? Do you remember that being a concern for the guys? Like, hey, what do I do for 10 minutes here?
I think everybody just tried to stay in character and stay involved in the match as much as they could. It was, as we learned a lot from the first chamber as to that very question there, and tried to incorporate some things for reactions from guys as we got on, and did it year after year after year. But, at first you're sitting there, basically you're sitting out there naked.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Like, you have to be like stereotypical pro wrestler, come on, all this bullshit, over the top nonsense, or just stand there like a fucking goof. There's almost nothing in between, is there?
Yeah. And if you're Chris Jericho, you can sit back and kind of put your feet up and be cocky heel and sit back and watch. I thought that going, the way that they did do it, and the fact that Triple H did get hurt, probably helped us a little bit, but the way that they were able to pair off and have kind of single stuff. If I was in one of those matches, again, you look at it from a shoot point of view. Are you going to get in a fight if you don't have to?
Right.
If somebody's kicking somebody else's ass, as long as they're not kicking your ass or you're not in danger of being eliminated, why are you going to get in there? Just psychology wise. And I always go back to the spot in 1992 in the Royal Rumble. Jake the Snake Roberts, and Jake coming in, and Jake throwing the snake in the ring, and then whoever it was, they were going through and they're wrestling, and Jake just went in the corner and sat there and watched. Why is he going to get involved? They're fighting.
Right.
So psychologically, we lose sight of that because it's a work. Well, this guy's coming in. What's he going to do? Fuck, watch. Pick your spot. Wait till it makes sense. So I thought they did a good job of that.